let's go then and turn to module conversion, because don't you think that many of the things you have to take into account speak exactly to these issues?
They certainly do,
Mm-hmm.
though it's a bit easier if you can separate this in time. You prepare it ahead of time
Sure.
or choose it ahead of time, and that makes it a bit easier to not try to assume control.
Mm-hmm.
But of course, there are lots of interesting and creative decisions to be made.
Tell me more about that. You are the one who has explored this over the past 2 or 3 weeks, so you are effectively our expert. Perhaps in
Mm-hmm.
explaining it to me, or better yet, describing. Explaining is
Yes, yes.
describing it to me, how it feels to do it and what you have done. Then this recording can actually be a bit of your guide, right?
Mm-hmm.
So let's
Yes.
try that.
Well, one thing you should do when converting a module is replace the various humanoids found in D&D with either humans or dwarves.
Mm-hmm.
And and you should further specify what kind of humans, bandits or savages, or in the case of dwarves, miners or slavers or whatever. And yeah, I think that's an important step.
This amuses me.
And,
I get this module, and let's say in the module there are fantasy role playing dwarves
mhm,
and in one place. And I look at them and I say, okay, those are human miners.
mhm.
Then I look over here and there is some other being, or perhaps some humans of some kind, or whatever. And I look at those and I say, okay, those are Nibelung dwarves,
Yes.
right? So that's we have to really remember your dwarf. Your sorry, I'm not making sense now. I just wanted to put that in as a footnote, as part of my understanding of this. So go on.
um, no, I've
Oh,
lost my train
I'm
of.
really sorry I
Uh,
did that. Okay, you told me right.
well,
Trade out the humans and then or trade in the humans.
um, let's see. Yeah, you tried out the humans, and for example, when I did this last week, that was for a Dyson Logos module.
Mm-hmm.
That was immediately interesting because there were ogres in there and lizardmen. And I thought, okay, if I replace the lizardmen with the humans, then the ogres will eat them. So there needs, if I do this, there needs to be a reason why they don't immediately get into fights. That led to other things, and that sort of thing is interesting, making it work. If you have
Mm-hmm.
those constraints, I need to use humans or dwarves here, and how can I fit this with the other parts of the adventure?
And that is also related to your concept that your actual monstrous beings are not really naturalistic races. We don't have to worry about tribes and social hierarchies and the anthropological history of the ogres.
Yes.
Right. And so that helps a little bit. Otherwise, then you have so many dials to spin for each group. In this case, however, you now have an interesting set of humans, and you have ogres who are obviously a problem for anybody. So, and
Mm-hmm.
they are just ogres. They can just be ogres. So, okay.
Yeah. Um, they also, I think the lizard men were riding some geckos, some giant geckos and stuff, and that doesn't feel like Central Europe or Western Europe.
Sadly, no,
Uh,
no. One wishes it were, but no.
no. So that's what got me thinking about newts and salamanders. Salamanders are again very D&D, so I pushed that aside and thought about newts and read about that on the internet. And then I got to this point where they're not very tasty, many of them, as a defensive mechanism. And that got me thinking about the humans, maybe getting some of that power of not being tasty to the
That's right.
ogres.
And the ogres
And
are like, yeah,
yeah,
these things taste terrible.
yes.
Excellent. So I think what you are also displaying with this is that the module really is left behind. There are many useful things. The maps. I mean, I have many role playing games and modules of all kinds, scattered around me, not just in this room, but in the hall, and you can imagine. Right? I'm just lucky they are not spilling out into the driveway and things like that. So the point is that I use these things all the time. Everybody I know does. We grab that map because that map has qualities, or we just like the look of the picture, and then that springboards things out. If there is an alcove in that map with an interesting shape in it, I can say, well, what the hell is that for me? Or I can go to their description and say, oh, that's a really cool idea. And then that goes together with what I have been preparing on my own, or the situation of our game so far. All of this is perfectly understandable, but I'm especially interested in it with the qualities you are talking about for your game, because it brings us to my third topic that I really want to investigate. But let's stay now with anything else that you have experienced so far. By the way, what you were saying, it was a Dyson Logos module, or basically a stock dungeon or an area or something like that. And so I was just talking to him, a few days ago. So there's your connection. So the primary issue is that not all of these entities, these things that we may find lying around or published or something like that, not all of them are carefully crafted works of genius. And in many cases are full of filler or have things in them which is control oriented. The Bushido game we are playing right now, for example, the published version is a heinous railroad. There is apparently there is a Tengu in these trees who is going to tell us through a trick that we have to fight 3 battles. And so then we meet 3 people, and perhaps we have to fight one of them. Then we are supposed to expect to fight the others, but then these other people come in and we fight them instead. And for some reason, according to the module, we are supposed to be amazed and surprised and delighted that we ended up fighting 3 battles, but we didn't have to fight the big bad ones, right? Or some shit like that. I mean, this is insane. I don't know who writes this crap.
Yes.
I really don't. I don't know what's in their mind. I don't know how this relates to play. The only thing I can say is that it doesn't, or they are trying to transcribe what did eventuate in their game as if it were now something to follow. So that's a very generous interpretation. So with this in mind, we have to look at any given module and say, what are some of the warning signs for your game? What are things that, without even thinking about it and feeling no shame, it's gone. That's gone. Fuck that noise. What did you do in this case? Anything? Although this is a stocked Dyson thing, so it's not really a railroad. Yeah. So I know that.
Yes, right. Exactly. In other cases, I would probably remove set pieces. And possibly make a map less linear, so we have different ways to approach it. Whether different factions or an extra entrance, not a string of rooms into a cave or something like that. That's not interesting.
Fortunately, I've found that in many modules, the map at least is a lot more interesting than the text.
Yes.
Right? The map often does have all of these different nuances and ways to go, or possible interactions between pieces of the map and things like that. that the written adventure seems not to even know what map it's using. Um, this is particularly the case for Dungeons and Dragons 4th edition materials.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, you look at this and you say, oh, this is a great layout for this whole community, right? And all these things that could go wrong, or all these different responses that different entities may have. And then you see what is written, which really is just a bunch of set piece fights in different rooms, and or different spots, and you're like, well, fuck that. That's you know, who cares, right? Who knows who they're about to fight? So I think those are it's not necessarily the list of exactly what to take out, although I think it's important. It's the knowledge that you should and can, right? That you
Mm-hmm.
can take it out. In the case of the Bushido game, the game master retains the presence of the Tengu, but
Mm-hmm. Yes.
realized either during play or beforehand that this whole business of tricking us into something blah 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 is bullshit, and we had more naturalistic interactions with the other characters and situations. So we did have those, but for some reason he retains the Tengu, and there was a brief bit of dialogue with the Tengu and one of the characters, and then the game master had the Tengu fly away and leave the entire situation. And I think, if I will have to ask him about this, but my impression was that he kept the Tengu because it was in the scenario, rightly
Mm-hmm. Yes.
removed the whole railroady aspect of its presence, but then in the middle of play sort of just realized, what the hell is this? Right, here I am playing this character and I have no idea what
Yeah,
I'm
he needs
doing.
some kind
What
of.
the hell is this guy doing here? I don't care. Okay, he's leaving. He's done. So the freedom to say, I don't have to have it in there just because this is the beloved Moldvay's lost city, but the freedom
Mm-hmm.
to say, you know what, that's bullshit. Who needs that part? It's gone.
Yes.
No, you have just profaned the lost city, the most beloved dungeon module of all time. Blah blah blah. Well, okay, whose is it anyway? It's mine now.
Mm-hmm.
So, okay, these are all actually very, very helpful points, I think. Um, and I'm glad you're having a good time with it.
Yes.
That's really, I mean, so I don't really need to go deeper into it at this point, I think,
Mm-hmm. That's
except
fine.
for my next point, except for my next
Yes.
question. Because fortunately, this conversation is far more linear and directed in retrospect than I expected. So
Mm-hmm.
what this means is, let's look at those confrontations during play, because
Mm-hmm.
everything you just said sets up the different possibilities for confrontations of some kind.
Yes.
Excellent. What's a confrontation like when you play this game?
Mm-hmm. I rely a lot on reaction rolls.
Mm-hmm. Aha.
Um, this is in keeping what I said earlier. I don't want to decide whether these guys are hostile or not.
Right.
I go to the tables, and then we get all sorts of wacky stuff. If suddenly the ogres are friendly and offer to fatten you up for a year or
That's
whatever,
right.
and really,
This one's
uh,
my joke from my game Elves comes to mind. It's like they loom up, and then one of the ogres looks at the other and says, "Well, I can't eat it if it's looking at me like that." So, but yes, I hear you on that. But do you see the point? I mean, you get the roll, and it doesn't tell you what to do. It provides a
mhm.
constraint that makes you happy to do what you want to do with it.
Yes,
Right.
yeah,
Right.
mhm,
That's the fun
exactly.
part. So with all of this at work, especially with the aesthetic, there's a dark humor to this aesthetic, isn't there? Anyway, I mean, there's a very oh, stereotypes, you are our friend, a Teutonic mirth in this, that
Yes.
is that has no sympathy for anything, right?
Mm.
So with with that in mind, let's go to these confrontations. We have our reaction roll, and I'm quite interested in the 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 negative. Well, it's not negative for play. We all like a fight. So the hostile interaction,
Hmm.
which in many cases might be quite likely, given
Yes.
right. So we find ourselves, and we have sadly this particular group of, I don't know, witches or something, has, or the kobolds or whoever, has decided that we are terrible. We are really causing trouble here. And
Hmm.
maybe we help. Maybe we're there to cause trouble, right? We are going to rescue the baby they have stolen. It's not like they're going to like that. But
Yes.
if they had reacted in a friendly way, maybe they'd be interested in making a deal of some kind, or trying to trick us in some way. But no, they hate our guts, right?
Hmm.
So here we go. I want to fight, or rather, I have to fight.
Hmm. Well, then we get to initiative and combat roles and so on, and of course morale, which is another big factor.
Hmm. I quite like this
And
behavioral quality that you are focusing upon at every step. This
mhm,
idea of what is the attitude. I'm interested in how play affects it, which is, I hope, present in some way,
yes.
so that it's not just random based on whatever it is we do. There is some sort of context for these roles, and that's great. Um,
Hmm.
but I'm quite interested to go now to this. Now we go to initiative, and now we go to rolls to hit and things like that. It's not quite that simple.